Welcome back to Fibers of Life and Business. I want to start today with something I've been quietly realizing over the last several weeks. Most of the major transitions in life, they don't announce themselves the way we expect them to. We wait for a single moment, a switch that flips, a milestone that tells us, okay, you're in a new chapter now. But that's not how transitions actually work. They don't arrive, they don't accumulate. And recently, I've stopped long enough to look at the evidence that's been piling up in my own life, and I want to tell you what I'm seeing. I'm Joe Watkins, and thanks for listening to episode 12 of Fibers of Life and Business podcast. And this episode is titled Act 3 of Life, From Bud to Spud. Now, to get into it, I want to tell you what I think Act 3 is. I think it's the latter third of our life. And at 51 years old, I have just entered in because the average male lives around 76. So I have now entered in the last third. That's why I'm calling it Act 3. So let me backtrack a little bit. Back in 2020, my partner Travis and I sat down and recorded an episode of my previous podcast called Big Truths of Small Business. And that topic was Act 2 of life. That's when we name things and act. This was our own way of looking at the three parts of life. We looked deep into the years of building career, family, pressure, achievement, the climb. We touched briefly on Act 3, but definitely thought that was somewhere in the future. Something that other people had reached, but we were still walking toward. Well, I've come to realize standing in it today at 51, I'm in Act 3. I'm in the very early version of Act 3. And that version of the podcast that we recorded with Travis nearly 5.5 years ago is not the version of me sitting in front of you today behind this microphone. Some things have changed, and it didn't change on a Tuesday. It didn't change in a single conversation. It changed across years while I was paying attention to other things. And only recently did I stop long enough to look at it directly. The evidence started piling up. So today I want to walk you through what I've been seeing, because I think a lot of you are probably standing in the same place that I'm standing and you haven't named it. And I think I'm going to do that for you today. The first piece of evidence that I'm in Act 3 is my body. The clearest courtroom for me is the golf course. My mind still believes that I can play the way I did 10 years ago when I was shooting low 70s every time, and I could actually still hit the ball 300 yards on demand. And every now and then I still can, but there's a cost attached to it, right? It's recovery. The recovery is different. My flexibility is different. It requires so much stretching before and after. My energy levels are different. My body has a voice and it's now talking back. Didn't do that at 30 years old, at 35 years old. Now, what I've come to understand is this: some things aren't taken from you because you failed. They simply changed because enough time passed. And that's a hard lesson for hard performers. I've struggled with this, especially as a man. We build our identities around capabilities, but the body is always the first witness. As always, I always want to thank you for listening to the show. And if you enjoy this, I really would appreciate you doing two things that are super important that allow me to keep moving forward, keep pushing content, start to spend more money to create better content for you guys. And that is just follow me or subscribe to whatever channel you're listening to right now. Also, share an episode that has impacted you. It's just so valuable to me and to this podcast, and maybe into the person you're sending this to. I appreciate you. The second piece of evidence, maybe even a little bit harder to talk about. Back in 2021, I sold my property management company that we had built to 1,700 properties under management. Building something like that takes serious drive, pressure, tolerance, years of decisions stacked on top of decisions. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. That's why this is also a business podcast. I figured it'd take me about 6 months to rebound, maybe a year. And then the same drive would come back roaring. I would start the next business. And boy, it didn't. It's like I hit a wall. I tried to manufacture it. I started looking at deals all over the place, even making offers on other businesses, maybe bigger deals, bigger conversations, new ventures. I told myself that I just got to get the engine warm. And, honestly, it's been quite a struggle. It definitely found me figuring out where am I at right now. That drive at 35, the one that built that company brick by brick, it just wasn't there anymore. It took me about 4 or 5 years to accept that. And I know a lot of people call that midlife crisis. I lost my edge. I thought something was wrong with me. I thought something was broken. And I needed to find it again somehow, some way. And it slowly hit me over time that nothing was wrong. And that's sort of what this episode's about. It's not wrong. I'm changing. You're changing. There comes a season when the engine that drove you for 30 years quietly steps off the throne. And what shows up in its place, it's not weaker. It's deeper. I'm going to give you a third piece of evidence that I have entered Act 3. Not too long ago, earlier this year, I had a real opportunity. It's a technology startup, a potential partnership, a chance to step in as the business side of something genuinely interesting to me. It was an AI business. And I want to be clear with you, I was committed. I was moving forward. I had done the due diligence. I'd done the work. The decision was go. I had money ready to commit. I was in. But as I got closer, I started noticing a misalignment. And it wasn't a misalignment with the technology or even my ability to make things happen. It was just a misalignment in sort of direction, in roles and responsibilities, and even the purpose of why I'm doing this. And here's what surprised me about my own response. The Joe Watkins of 15 years ago would have powered through anything in his midst. I mean, anything that would have told me, nah, you can't do this. Well, this wasn't about a I can't do it moment. It was a misalignment of work, because the deal back then would matter more than the alignment, but not today. My mentality back then would have been build first, sort it out later. Don't leave money on the table. Don't walk away from momentum. Well, that's Act 2 way of thinking. But I'm not the Joe Watkins of 15 years ago. So I made a decision to pause the opportunity at this time, not to slam the door, not to cut a relationship. I always leave doors open in case realignment of my goals becomes later possible. But I'm not going to build another business that I have to talk myself into every morning. If I'm going to build something now, it has to be in complete alignment with who I am and what matters to me now. The decision not to move forward in that company, that's a clear decision that I'm moving into Act 3. That just would not have been in the cards in Act 2. I'm making it happen. The Act 3 me couldn't make any other call. A fourth piece of evidence hits a little closer to home, but it's not the most surprising one, right? I have 2 kids, and I'm seeing my own grown children differently now. They're even entering in their mid-20s to Act 2. They're building careers. I have a new grandbaby, so they're raising families. They're carrying all the pressures of Act 2. And I find myself watching with a compassion that I'd never had for myself when I was their age. Because I know what they don't know yet. I know the climb is going to cost them things they can't see right now. I know that some of the things they're chasing aren't going to feel the way they think they will when they catch them. I know the perspective they need is the perspective they can't yet have, because perspective only comes from the other side of the climb. And here's what I'm realizing. The right response to seeing them in Act 2 isn't to rescue them out of it. It's to be available, to love them through it, to not lecture them about a place they haven't reached yet, to let them build and to be steady in their presence behind them. That's Act 3 thinking. Act 2 me would have wanted to fix things, do it for them. Act 3 me knows better. There's a fifth piece of evidence, and I think it's the one that matters most. My faith doesn't feel theoretical anymore. There was a long stretch of my life, mostly in Act 2, where my faith was real, but I also somewhat managed it. I believed in God. I went to church. I prayed when I needed to, which was seldom. But God was just a dimension of my life rather than the center of it. That's beginning to change. Whatever's happened in the last season, eternity has stopped feeling like a concept and started feeling like a destination. Time has stopped feeling unlimited. Prayer has stopped feeling like a checklist. Scripture has stopped feeling like education and started to feel like instruction. Gosh, think about that. The Bible is not education. It's instruction. And honestly, I'm grateful for that because everything else I'm describing in this episode would feel hollow without it. The verdict is in. The evidence has been demonstrated to me. My body, my drive, my decision to pause an opportunity that didn't align with me, the way I see my kids now, the way my faith has changed me or changed in me. When you stack those things up, I just can't argue with them, right? The verdict is in. I am in Act 3. And it didn't arrive on a Tuesday, right? It accumulated across years until I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I think a lot of you listening to this are standing in the same place and you haven't said it out loud yet. And maybe today is that day. Let me ask you something. Have you took stock of the last 3 to 5 years of your own life? What evidence has been piling up that you've been too busy to look at? Not what you wish were true, not what you're trying to make true. What's actually been changing inside you that you haven't named yet? Hold that question, we'll come back to it. Once you accept you're in Act 3, as I have, the question becomes, how do I do this well? Because you can do this badly. We've seen it, right? You can do it badly by recreating Act 2 with a new brand, a new mountain to climb, a new scoreboard, a new chase dressed up in the language of legacy. You can do it badly by refusing to accept the season, fighting it every single day, angry that life refuses to stay frozen where you wanted it. You can do it badly by chasing relevance, trying to prove to a younger generation that you're still in the conversation. I've done all of these. Maybe I'm even doing that right now in this podcast. I've asked myself that question. But there's another road, and I want to tell you about a man who walked it better than almost anyone I've ever known. And that was my grandpa, Bud. Yeah, we called him Bud. He lived to be nearly 90 years old. And when he passed, I went to his funeral expecting it to be what funerals usually are. And it wasn't. It was just incredible. There were hundreds and hundreds of people there. And at one point during the service, they did something I had not yet seen at a funeral. And this was back several years ago during COVID. They started passing the microphone around. One person after another stood up and shared a personal story about what Bud had meant to them specifically. A story about a time he showed up. A story about something he said. A story about how he had been there in a moment they couldn't have made it through alone. There were extended family members, employees, vendors, and customers asking for the mic. And I'll never forget the realization that started to set in as I sat there listening to all these stories. The love that I had felt from Bud, the love that I thought was only mine, or at least felt uniquely mine, that love was felt so personal and so specific, so intimate to me as a grandson. He had given that same love potentially to hundreds of other people. Each one of them sitting in the sanctuary thinking the same thing I was thinking. He loved me like that too? How could that be possible? That is not a long life. That is a life that understood Act 3 and used it to love people with time and intention. Bud didn't ration his time. He didn't hoard it for the people who could repay him. He gave it hour by hour, conversation by conversation, person by person for decades. And I have such unique, specific things I remember that Bud did. I remember when he picked me up and stood me on top of the mailbox at my house. I remember when he snuck me a $5 bill and said, "You go buy anything you want." I remember when Bud took me to the golf course and watched me hit golf balls when I first started and gave me such encouraging words. And here's something I hadn't quite told you yet. If you listened to a previous episode, I told you about becoming a grandfather. And when my granddaughter was born, I had to decide what I was going to be called. And I've told you, I picked the name Spud. And I picked it because it reminded me of my grandpa Bud. I didn't want to make a big deal about it then. I didn't even tell most people, but the truth is, I want to be to her what he was to me. I want to live in Act 3 that ends the way his ended, with a sanctuary full of people who each thought the love was just for them. I've been reading Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Life recently. It's a great book. And chapter 15 is a really meaningful one, and it ties directly into Act 3. And this is something I really want to leave you with. It's important. The chapter is about love, not sentimental love, not the love that's shown on every movie and every TV show and TikTok, right? Not the bumper sticker love. The idea that life ultimately is about learning how to love God and love people well. And there's a line in the book that I think is phenomenal. Warren says, "The best expression of love is giving of your time." Yes, your time. We know this intuitively, but have you ever connected it directly? The best expression of love is the giving of your time. You can always make more money, but you cannot make more time. You can build a business or rebuild a business. You can rebuild a portfolio. You can recover financial loss. You cannot recover last Tuesday afternoon. That hour with your child, that dinner with your spouse, that conversation with your aging parent, that quiet moment with God, well, once it's gone, right? Once the time ticks, you don't get time back. So doesn't it make sense that where you spend your time is very indicative of what you're loving and what you're spending your love on? The only real decision we have in life is where are we going to give our time? Listen to this from 1 John chapter 3. This is the scriptural anchor. This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions in truth. God, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, love is actionable. And if it's actionable, then it's what we do with our time. Love's not what we say. Love is what we give. And the most honest thing we ever give is our time. My grandpa Bud knew that. He didn't say it directly. He didn't write in a book. He just lived it for 90 years. So let me ask you, if I pulled up your calendar, and we talked about the calendar in the last episode, but if I pulled up your calendar or you pulled up your calendar from last week, not what you intended to do, not what you wished you had done. So maybe it's not even your calendar. Maybe it's the calendar that you would rewrite based on what you actually did. What would your time say about what you love? Not who you say you love, what you actually love. Because our calendars, or the retrospective calendar, it just doesn't lie, right? They're more honest words than anything you can say is by what you do. And that's really set with me. I mean, it's a hard thing to actually contemplate. It might be the most important question I've asked myself and you guys all year. So when the verdict comes in, every fiber has to start reordering. So here's some thoughts on the fibers. In the financial fiber, freedom matters more than accumulation. In the intellectual fiber, wisdom matters more than information. In the biological fiber, health stops being theoretical when you've entered Act 3. In the emotional fiber, peace becomes more valuable than excitement. In the relational fiber, the people in your life become the actual scoreboard, right? The time you give them. And in the spiritual fiber, eternity stops feeling like a concept. It's real. That's not a decline, right? That's alignment. That's realignment. That's proper alignment of your fibers. And this is at the heart of the fibers of life. In closing, I want to say that Act 3 isn't owed to anyone. This is powerful to understand. Bud got 90 years. Some people don't get 50. Some don't get 25. Some do not get the ability to even ask this question. So if you've been given this season, and this season we're calling Act 3, don't waste it by recreating the Act 2 climb. Don't chase relevance. Bury yourself in the noise. Lay something down. Pour something forward to the next generation. Be present in someone intentionally and more often. The soul no longer wants what the ego wanted, right? And it's for a reason. It's time to give your time to what was always supposed to matter. And if you do this season the way Bud, my grandpa Bud did, if I love my granddaughter the way he loved me, if I love my wife, my kids, my parents, my friends, my mentees, my God, with the kind of presence, time, and attention that Bud did, then someday, God willing, decades from now, there will be a room somewhere with people in it, and maybe a microphone will pass, and someone in that room will say, "He loved me like I was the only one." And someone else will hear and quietly think the same. "He loved me like that too." That's the legacy I want. Maybe that's the legacy you're looking for. This is the fibers of life and business, right in action. I'm Joe Watkins, and thank you for spending part of your precious time with me today. Let's use our time to multiply the most important fibers of our life and our business. Thanks for listening.